Good evening, everyone. Welcome all, and thank you for joining us today from the United States and all around the world. We are gathered today to observe Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day. Today marks the 13th year anniversary of Mullabaikal massacre, where the Tamils suffered thousands of deaths, many more disappearances, human rights atrocities, along with mass displacement. My name is Priya Kuganendran, and once again, it's my honor to MC this event on behalf of the Tamil American United Political Action Committee. Tamil American United is the first Tamil political action committee in the United States. Our mission is to get justice for the victims and survivors of genocide in the Tamil homeland through an international investigation mechanism. We also want the US to support an internationally monitored and conducted referendum for the Tamil regions of Sri Lanka to determine their independence and sovereignty democratically and peacefully. Furthermore, due to the long, costly war waged against the Tamils and government corruption, Sri Lanka is headed towards become a failed state, if not already there. By bringing back the same failed policies and politicians, Sri Lanka will fail to bring justice for Tamil genocide. Please note, in the past 74 years, none of the successive Sinhala government has offered any solutions to the underlying Tamil issues. Therefore, this is the right time for the US intervention for the survival of Tamils in Sri Lanka by forming an interim governing mechanism in the northeast regions of the island before a permanent solution through referendum. Now we will commence this Remembrance Day by lighting the lamps to honor the victims of survivors of Sri Lankan ethnic conflict. Please light the lamps at this time. As we light this traditional oil lamp, we pay our respect to those who perished with the hope of one day their land will be freed and their people will live with dignity. Now we will observe a moment of silence to honor all victims by closing our eyes. Thank you. Similar to last year, we will have remarks from a few United States leaders who champion human rights, along with predominant Tamil political and civil society leaders. First, we have Congresswoman Deborah Ross. As a long-term friend of Tamils, Congresswoman Ross led many initiatives in the Congress for Tamils, including House Resolution 413 and Tom Lando's hearing. She is the first elected US Congress member to acknowledge Tamil genocide. She is a woman leader aspired by many. Here's Congresswoman Ross.
Well, thank you, Priya. And I want to say that today is a sad day, but it's also an important day because the Canadian Parliament recognized Tamil genocide. And it is important that the international community, including the United States, follow suit. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, and I'm honored to join so many friends and supporters. And I sincerely appreciate the many outstanding contributions that the North Carolina Tamil community has made to our state and to our nation. As you know, 13 years ago, tens of thousands of Tamils perished and persisted at the hands of the Sri Lankan military, victims of a senseless wave of violence perpetrated in the waning moments of the Civil War. Every war is tragic and brutal, but this was bloodshed on a horrific scale. Heinous brutality inflicted on scores of innocent men, women, and children. Today, we mourn all those who were lost and rededicate ourselves to the cause of securing a just and equitable future for the Tamil people. The current Sri Lankan administration has turned a blind eye to past abuses, elevating individuals implicated in war crimes to senior government positions. And as we know, Sri Lanka is in complete disarray because of their inability to govern. I am currently working with the State Department and members of Congress from both parties to shine a bright light on the plight of the Tamil minority. Last year, as Priya told you, I introduced a bipartisan resolution honoring the lives lost in the Civil War and expressing support for key reforms in Sri Lanka to ensure a lasting and peaceful political solution. I'm also happy that we had an important hearing in the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission last December, examining ongoing rights abuses perpetrated by the Sri Lankan government. Again, that was done in a bipartisan way. Now, more than ever, we need strong American leadership to rally the international community to promote peace, justice, and accountability in Sri Lanka. And again, we are thrilled that the Canadian government has taken the lead just today. Again, it's a pleasure to be with you. I know it is a sorrowful evening, and I will mourn with you as well. We're coming together at one of the most turbulent times in Sri Lankan recent history. And while the current economic crisis will mean real pain and deprivation, I'm also hopeful that during this economic downturn, we can sow the seeds of positive change. I think we have the right ambassador to Sri Lanka. This crisis could mark a decisive turning point for Sri Lanka, but only if our government continues to elevate the Tamil community and the legitimate demands for justice. And I join you in those demands. I appreciate the leadership and friendship of everyone on this call. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to continuing to work together in the critical weeks and months ahead. I am happy to be with you for a few more minutes before we start to vote, and thank you so much to everyone on this call.
Thank you, Representative Ross, for once again for your continuous support and attending the event. Next, we have Velan Swamigal. He is a Tamil Civil Society. He's from Tamil Civil Society in the northeastern region of Sri Lanka, and a spiritual seeker, teacher, and leader. He is one of the organizers of the Tamil people's movements, including P2P. Here is Velan Swamigal.
Vanakkam, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Tamil Americans United Political Action Committee for providing me the opportunity to share my views. I think it is important for all of us to understand what led the Elam Tamils in Sri Lanka to traverse through Mullivaikal in 2009 and why justice hasn't prevailed yet, even after 13 years. Today is Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day. Even 13 years after the end of the ethnic war, the Tamil territory is still being occupied by the Sri Lankan military, and the Tamil people are continuing to be oppressed while the government of Sri Lanka is systematically involved in land grab for building Sinhalese settlements and Buddhist temples with the intention of changing the demography and to break the continuity of the Tamils' traditional homeland. The Tamils are fast losing their lands to the systematic Sinhalese agenda. The Sinhalese are determined to convert the Tamil homeland as theirs with the intention to make the island as a mono Sinhalese Buddhist island. Tamils have not gotten justice nor their political rights. The Tamils have not been assured of non-recurrence of past atrocity crimes against them. It is ethnically, morally, and legally wrong to deny the Tamils their freedom and independence. From the spiritual standpoint, Tamil people, just like any other people, are entitled to complete freedom and independence. From the point of view of the UN's Charter and resolutions, the Tamils are also entitled to self-determination and independence. God has not given any other race or ethnic group of people more powers to oppress and rule the Tamils. Nobody has the authority to recommend to Tamil people to accept anything less than complete and full independence. Nobody, including myself, can recommend Tamil people to be second-class citizens in their own land. Only Tamil people can determine if they accept or reject complete freedom and independence. Our people should be able to defend and protect themselves. Asking for their rights cannot be a crime, but Sri Lanka's 6th Amendment to the Constitution makes it a crime to promote a free and independent country for Elam Tamils. The 6th Amendment to the Sri Lankan Constitution prevents freedom of speech for the Tamils in Sri Lanka. Denial of freedom of speech is a basic human rights violation. People should always be free to express themselves. That's why people's view can't be a crime. People should be always free to express their views. And personally, I also strongly feel that even though we have our different thoughts and our rights, but we are unable to express it independently. And we are actually here in northern eastern part of Sri Lanka, our homeland, we are living in an open jail. That's why God has given them the ability to speak and communicate through language, because people have their freedom of speech. Exercising the freedom of expression without fear and unlawful interference is central to living in an open and fair society. Yes, the governments may have the duty to prohibit hateful and inciting speeches, but not to silence the legitimate peaceful demands of the people. The right to freedom of expression is enshrined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Tamil people are made voiceless by Sri Lanka. To speak for them is a service to God. To tell the world what our people are wishing for is a service. Our people must be given an opportunity to be heard. A referendum is an internationally recognized tool to listen to our people. We are not asking for anything new or unusual, but the independence referendums have been conducted around the world, and we are asking the same for the Tamils. After 1990, the referendum is the only way to find the permanent political solution in the world. There were referendums in Eritrea, East Timor, Montenegro, Kosovo, Quebec, Scotland, South Sudan, etc. The Tamil people also must be given an opportunity to be heard via an independence referendum. Referendum is the most appropriate democratic tool. World and the responsible citizens need to ensure justice is done for all crimes for all people. If the world needs to be a better place, we all need to get involved and do our part to make it better. We should not allow the bad and evil things to go on any group of people. Silence or sitting on the fence can't be a justifiable position. One cannot be neutral between good and evil. One cannot be neutral between right and wrong. There's no middle ground between right and wrong. We need to speak up for the oppressed and do the right thing. Being silent or neutral is an immoral thing to do. Inaction is not the path we should take. Justice must prevail over injustice, and we should do our part. Only a referendum conducted by the international community for the Elam Tamils to determine their political destiny can bring permanent, sustainable, democratic, peaceful political solutions that can save the existence of the Tamils in the island. On behalf of Elam Tamils, I call on the international community, especially the US, for the following 3 actions. 1, a referendum for the Elam Tamils to determine their permanent political solution. An interim governing mechanism for the Elam Tamils to govern and protect themselves and their lands until the referendum is held. The referral of Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court and to investigate all crimes, including genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed against the Tamil people by Sri Lanka. The genociders, the Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Mahinda Rajapaksa, and other people should be referred to ICC, and also Sri Lanka should be taken to the ICJ, International Court for Justice. I would like to make the above as an appeal to the international community, and we are especially from the US and international community, all our people here in our homeland are expecting this. So the ICC and ICJ, the international justice, and the public referendum in northern eastern part of Sri Lanka, these are the 2 main demands of Elam Tamils. Until that, we need some sort of interim governing mechanism, mainly for our security and to protect our lands and ourselves. And I would like to once again thank our American Tamils United Political Action Committee and the guests and the political leaders who are from US here. And we will be in touch with you. And we have commemorated the Mullivakkal, the Remembrance Day today morning. And a lot of people gathered here in the Mullivakkal common ground, and people are having the same view as we are civil societies. We are also organizing the people to come up with these opinions. But unfortunately, they are very much afraid of the Sri Lankan state, and especially with the military. And we request even the military should be removed from the north and eastern part of Sri Lanka, and other demands also we are having. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Swamigal. Next, we have Most Reverend Christian Noel Emmanuel, who is the Catholic Bishop of Trincomalee and a leader of Tamil Civil Society Forum. Reverend Emmanuel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Vanakkam, everyone. May 18th marks the Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day. Since 2008 and 2009, we had the intensity of war culminating with this genocide. And for the last 13 years, people have been clamoring for justice and peace, peaceful living, but nothing happens. This has been the culture in Sri Lanka. I take you back to the recent history. In late 1960s, there was a JVP insurrection, we call that. That is leftist younger group, youngsters coming together and fighting against the government. And the government in turn wiped out a good number of youths, that is Sinhala youths in the south. Then again in 1988, when the Indian army, that is Indian peacekeeping force, came to Sri Lanka, there was another type of insurrection in the south, and a similar uprisal of youth took place. And again, a good number of youth, Sinhala youth, were wiped out. And this has been the culture and the system in Sri Lanka. And in 2009, we have this experience of these people at Mullivakkal, good number of thousands of people being massacred. And before that, all the journalists and the NGOs and INGOs were asked to leave the place. So there was no media available. And thank God, at least some LTT cadres, they recorded some events, and we are able to see and witness those events. And today we clamor, people clamor wanting their loved ones. So people went missing. They surrendered at the last war. Many surrendered to the forces, but they went missing. And we also have political prisoners still in jail without any interrogation. And we also have rehabilitated LTT cadres, but they have no freedom at all in their own places, in their own villages. Any stranger coming into the village, they are supposed to inform the local army camp. So they are suppressed to such extent that they are not able to speak out or live in peace with their families. And their concern is perpetrators are to be brought to justice. Release of political prisoners, and they want to know also the state of those who surrender. So justice, truth, and accountability is demanded by the people of North and East, and non-recurrence of cruelty is to be assured. And I would also like to recall to you the Easter bomb blast that took place in 2019. 269 people were killed, out of them 45 foreign nationals, 3 police officers. And the former president, Maithripala Sirisena, appointed a presidential commission of inquiry. And then again, we had also parliamentary select committee to inquire into these events, but nothing so far happened. 3 years have gone, and only a few persons were arrested, but those really they were unearthed in a sense. They were brought to notice by the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. They are not interrogated, they are not arrested. So today we have this, especially in the East, Trincomalee and Batticaloa and Ampara districts, we have multi-religious, multi-ethnic communities living in these districts. So land grabbing is a common feature here in order to construct Buddhist temples, more Buddhist temples where there are no Buddhists at all, and also to bring new singular settlements in those areas where the land of Tamils are taken over and new settlements are done. Then the government offices in these 3 districts, most of them are majority Sinhalese or Muslims. And there are some Tamil offices, but they are very much controlled by the government. They have to act whatever the government officials or ministers tell them. So they don't consider Tamil communities as they don't consider Tamils as part of citizens of Sri Lanka, and they don't give their rights. So Tamils have no voice. They are very much under control. We have, I used to visit villages whenever I visit, or whenever some strangers or officers visit, there'll be calls from the authorities asking for the details of those who visited, why they came, how they came, all these details. In other words, they say, the villagers say that they don't want us come up in life, grow in life. So the Tamils have no voice. We also have different commissions, but still people are very much neglected. And 2 years back in the North and East, the 4 bishops, we organized Northeast Bishops Council in order to understand, in order to discuss and see how we can work together and work towards reconciliation. So we have regular meetings once in 3 months or 2 months, and we discuss about the situations. And yesterday also we released an important statement, Northeast Bishops Council, May 18, Day of Tamil Genocide, under that title. So what we ask is accountability of all the government leaders, because the system here in Sri Lanka is one government does one kind of type of genocide or any type of atrocities, then the next government will not inquire or show that they are inquiring, but their purpose will be to safeguard the previous government. So governments saving each other or taking care of each other or safeguarding each other has been the culture here in Sri Lanka. Somebody has to do something. we Tamils will not be able to do anything. Of course, we can clamor, we can ask the international community to do something, especially America and Canada, where you have a better say in Sri Lanka, and you can give a lot of pressure to the Sri Lankan government to show the assets and to be more and more accountable. So what we need is, as Velan Swamigal said, referendum, so that the people will be able to determine themselves, their future, their peace, and their life. And a peaceful process and a permanent solution that is also needed. And also bring all the perpetrators to the criminal court, ICC, in order to bring about justice to the Tamil nation, to the Tamil communities. So this is my humble appeal to America and Canada and all the international communities to do something to give more and more pressure to the government of Sri Lanka, whatever party they may be, in order to bring about a permanent solution and peace to the Tamil communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Emmanuel. Next, we have Meena Ilancheyan, Tamil Americans United Political Action Committee President and a Tamil community leader, to deliver her remarks.
Vanakkam, good morning, good evening to all our distinguished leaders, activists, and supporters. We remember the thousands of precious lives lost, innocent children, women, and men. Structural genocide was conducted on Tamils by the Sri Lankan government since independence in the form of laws, state-sponsored attacks, torture, and mass killings. The war ended in 2009, but the root cause of the war remains unresolved. The Tamil region is occupied and oppressed, and the singalization of Tamil land is currently taking place at an alarming rate. The Sri Lankan government received military help from other countries, promising that they would solve the Tamil issue by providing an equitable political solution after winning the war. However, they have gone back on their promises and have withdrawn from multiple UN resolutions on international investigation and accountability. The impunity nature of successive governments continues to date in Sri Lanka. Today, the entire island is going through a huge economic crisis. For the Sinhalese, it's about their daily life being affected, lack of fuel, cooking gas, and other commodities. The Tamils have seen a much, much bigger disaster. Lack of justice, freedom, and the right to live. The current situation is a cumulative result of Sinhala-only ideology, unresolved Tamil issue, widespread corruption, uncontrolled debt, and the sheer incompetency in managing the economy. The Tamils should not be paying for this crisis. IMF, World Bank, or any other country should be cautious in helping Sri Lanka and needs to realize the deceptive nature of the government, including its outstanding promises and commitments to the international community, the UN and the UNHRC. Any problem, whether big or small, can only be solved if the root cause of the issue is identified and fixed. Fixing the symptoms will not yield a long-term solution. At this juncture, we need an interim Tamil self-governing mechanism, an internationally monitored referendum for all the Tamils from the north and east, their descendants, and the Tamil diaspora who were forced to flee their homeland. War crimes and the genocide committed against the Tamil people by the Sinhala state must be investigated in the ICC. Demilitarization should happen in the north and eastern region. As we mourn for our losses, we also have hope and strength with our expanding ally in the US Congress, Tamil leaders and activists from our homeland, activists and supporters around the world. Together, we shall overcome. Nandri, thank you.
Thank you, Meena. Next, we have State Senator Jeff Jackson. He's a veteran, former assistant district attorney, and a member of the Army National Guard. Jeff Jackson is the Democratic Party candidate for U.S. Congress, North Carolina, District 14. Congratulations on your win yesterday. Here's Senator Jackson.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And thank you for having me. About 2 years ago, I knew very, very little about the genocide that occurred and about the history. And State Senator Wiley Nickel, who I believe is here tonight, came to my office and he asked me if I knew anything about the history. And I said very little. And so he taught me about it. He said, I think this is really important, and let's take a few minutes and let me teach you about this. And so we did. And then he said, there are some volunteers who are local, he said, in his district, who wanted to meet with me about this and teach me more and give me a personal perspective. And so I agreed and met with a number of you at that time. And it was absolutely crucial to forming my understanding of the events that took place, the need for, as Representative Ross said, justice and accountability, and completely changed my thinking about this and informed my view of it in a way that brings me in complete agreement with everything that we heard from Representative Ross. So while State Senator Wiley Nickel sort of brought me to this issue, it's been Representative Ross's leadership that has really showed me what policy levers we need to move in order to address the reconciliation that needs to occur, the justice and accountability that needs to occur. I look to her for her leadership on this. And I want to thank all of you individually. You speak, each one of you, there are what, 100 people here? You speak, each one of you, on behalf of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. You have an opportunity, because of your good fortune in life, to have the ability and the wherewithal to engage directly with elected leaders. And you're doing that in a highly effective way. And I just want to tell you how much it means. There are very few people who can do what your volunteers have done as effectively as they've done it. You took someone who didn't know a lot about this and made that person an advocate along with all of you. It's a tremendous service that you do on behalf of your country. I think everything Representative Ross said with respect to the chaos in Sri Lanka right now is absolutely right. I think on the one hand, it is tragic. On the other hand, to her point, it's an opportunity to set things right, because clearly there are going to be some major changes coming, because there have to be, because of the level of dysfunction and chaos that exists. And making sure that justice and accountability get incorporated into those changes is crucial, and I think highly possible. So this is my long way of saying thank you to Wiley Nickel, thank you to Representative Ross, but more importantly, thank you to all of you for taking the time to volunteer and have these conversations. They've really made a difference for me. And I look forward to seeing you all again, and hopefully in person very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Next, we have State Senator Wiley Nickel. As you all know, Wiley is a long-term supporter of Tamil Americans and a champion of justice for Tamil genocide. Wiley Nickel is the Democratic Party candidate for U.S. Congress, North Carolina, District 13. Congrats to you two on your win last night. Here's Senator Nickel.
Thank you so much for having me here. It really is an honor to follow Congresswoman Deborah Ross, who is leading in the U.S. House of Representatives right now. Jeff Jackson is going to be a strong voice as well, and I'm very excited about his election results too, and his prospects to go to Washington and be a real voice for change. Vanakkam. Through the years, I've truly been honored to call so many in our Tamil American community of North Carolina dear and close friends. And I'm humbled to be asked here to speak on Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day and to join this community in this very sacred space as we honor the memory of the lives lost and recommit ourselves to the pursuit of justice. Now, 13 years ago, the Tamil people of Sri Lanka were victims of genocide as the Sri Lankan government deliberately targeted Tamil civilian populations, resulting in the death of somewhere between 70,000 and 170,000 people in the final months of the war. I stand with you in recognizing the Tamil genocide, as together we are going to fight for genocide recognition here in the United States and internationally. Over successive Sri Lankan governments, there has been no meaningful accountability or justice for victims, and the Tamil community has continued to face discrimination and political oppression. For a peaceful future on the island of Sri Lanka, the demands of justice and accountability for the victims and survivors of Tamil genocide must be met. And for true peace, there must finally be a political solution that addresses the root cause of the armed conflict and meaningfully accounts for the demands of the Tamil people. A durable and sustainable political solution is the key to addressing longstanding tensions and advancing justice and human rights. That's why I'm honored to work with the Tamil American community as an advocate for accountability and a political solution for the Tamil people of Sri Lanka. Together, we have worked to educate other leaders like Jeff Jackson and the broader public on the plight of the Tamil people. And this is a fight that I hope to continue in Congress with the leaders we've just mentioned here and so many others. A commitment to human rights and freedom in Sri Lanka is not only critical for the future of the Tamil people, but for the future of the entire Pacific region. And the United States must be clear. Genocide cannot be committed with impunity. The international community must reaffirm its commitment to human rights in Sri Lanka through an international accountability mechanism. And the United States can and must be a leader in this. We cannot rest until the Tamil people receive true justice and accountability. On this Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day, I remain awed by the resilience of this community, and I mourn with you. And most importantly, I stand with you on this journey towards justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Nicol. Next, I call upon Mr. Shritharan to share a few words with us. Mr. Shritharan is a long-serving parliamentarian who represents Tamil National Alliance Party. In addition, his family members are living witnesses of Tamil genocide. Mr. Shritharan, over to you.
Vanakkam, all of you. Thank you, Priya. Greetings to everyone who has joined this event. First, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for providing me the opportunity to share my views on this day of meditation, revival and commemoration, as we are observing the 13th Remembrance Day of Tamil people who were persecuted by the genocidal Sri Lankan terror state. I think it is important for all of us to understand what led the Elam Tamils in Sri Lanka to traverse through Mullivaikal in 2009 and why justice hasn't prevailed yet even after 30 years. By living in a world which claimed to value the basic human rights, in contrary, the genocidal Sri Lankan terror state has successfully vindicated itself so far from all crimes against humanity. Sri Lanka has been successful in deceiving the international community, the UN and the UNHRC. To keep the long story short, the mere reasons why the Tamils were faced to struggle for self-determination is the decision of the Sri Lankan state to embark on the embracive racist construct quoted with Sinhala Buddhist Savanist ideology since obtaining independence in 1948. The Elam Tamils being a nation with a sovereign kingdom and territorial recognition prior to the European invasion became the target of the Sinhalese in their post-independence goal of making the whole island as mono-Sinhalese Buddhist island. All efforts from the Tamils for survival were overpowered and crushed from time to time. Several political PACs agreed between Sinhala and Tamil leaders were torn apart by the Sinhalese Buddhist monks and the main Sinhalese parties that were in opposition. Eventually, Tamil were pushed to take up weapons for survival, and the tragic episode ended in Mullivaikal in 2009, taking the lives of 146,679 Tamils based on available records. Thousands and thousands of Tamils lost their homes, livelihoods, got amputated, etc. The crimes of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity were committed against the Tamil people by the Sinhalese Sri Lanka. Since 1948 to date, we have been subjected to ruthless and merciless genocide in our traditional homeland by the successive Sinhalese governments and their supporters. Amid all such monstrous oppressions, I proudly and confidently state that all these catastrophes unleashed on us Tamils have achieved nothing but made us stronger and more committed towards our Tamil national case in our Tamil traditional homeland. The bitter wrath is that we Tamils as a nation have failed to ensure justice for the genocidal victims. We Tamils are struggling for our existence. International community so far has not realized the urgency in helping us. Today, it is proven beyond doubts that Sinhala Sri Lanka is failed state politically and economically. The current economic crisis is purely due to the Sri Lankan state oppressive racist policies. The Tamils are not responsible for the current independent Sri Lankan, and the Tamils must not suffer for the mistaken incompetency of Tamil Sinhalese Sri Lanka. Even in this predicament, the Sinhalese establishment is busy taking over Tamil's lands with the intent to make the island mono Sinhalese Buddhist island. In this modern world, it is the responsibility of the international community, especially countries like the United States, to ensure justice for the international crimes and ensure non-recurrence of atrocity crimes. In this modern world order, such crimes should not be allowed, but more importantly, preventive measures must be put in the place. The Tamils are asking for justice and not recurrence. They are asking for their political rights. They just won't live peacefully in their homeland. I would like to request the government of the United States to fulfill the rights of Elam Tamils for life, liberty, and pursuit the happiness, and the US takes tangible measures to ensure non-recurrence of the past international crimes on our people, and our people are given their inalienable rights to self-determination via a referendum to determine their political future. Only a referendum conducted by international community for the Elam Tamils to determine their political destiny and can bring permanent, sustainable, democratic, peaceful political solution that can serve the extent of the Tamils in the island. On behalf of the Elam Tamils, I call on the international community, especially the US, for the following three actions. First, a referendum for the Elam Tamils to determine their permanent political solution. Second, an interim governing mechanism for the Elam Tamils to govern and protect themselves and their lands until the referendum is held. Third, the referral of Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court and to investigate all crimes, including genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed against the Tamil people by Sri Lanka. I would like to make the above as an appeal to the international community and am hopeful that our cry will be heard. Thank you very much. Nandri.
Thank you, Mr. Shritharan. Next, we have Ernest Rajakone, who is an active advocate for the Tamil people and a law student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Last year, Ernest was honored as a member of Pittsburgh Magazine 40 Under 40. Here's Ernest to deliver his message.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm honored to be with you today on Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day, a difficult day for our people as we mark the anniversary of the Mullivaikkal massacre and remember the victims and the survivors. Today, we come together across the globe to grieve as a people. We mourn together as a community for the lives that were taken. Today, Tamils gathered at Mullivaikkal, coming together to remember their loved ones. They gathered despite the fact that the Mullivaikkal memorialization site remains under heavy military surveillance and that Tamils engaging in remembrance activities have been subject to surveillance as well as police threats and harassment. It is imperative that members of the international community condemn this violation of the Tamil people's right to memorialization. Tellingly, despite an economic crisis crippling the country with massive shortages, the Sri Lankan government continues to spend significant resources repressing Tamil memorialization. Actions like these aren't unique to the current Rajapaksa government, but represent the Sinhala Buddhist nationalism animating successive Sri Lankan governments since independence. Sinhala Buddhist nationalist policies led not only to the discrimination and pogroms against Tamils that served as the root cause of the armed conflict, but also helped lead to the political and economic crises embroiling the nation today. Throughout the course of the conflict, the Sri Lankan government severely limited the freedom of the press and utilized abductions, torture, blatant targeting of civilian populations, and sexual violence as weapons of war. The current embattled president of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, served as Secretary of Defense in the final stages of the conflict in 2009, a time during which the Sri Lankan government committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide against the Tamil people. The international community's failure to protect the Tamil people during the height of the genocide, and subsequently to hold the Sri Lankan government accountable to its international commitments, has enabled the Sri Lankan government to delay and ultimately deny transitional justice processes. This lack of accountability allowed the brutality of the Sri Lankan state to flourish, such that its violence, which has always targeted Tamils on the island, has now been turned recently against Sinhalese protests in the south. Focusing on the current crises without addressing the root causes of the conflict or the long-standing grievances of Tamils will merely maintain the status quo and perpetuate cycles of violence, repression, and genocide. In response to the current political instability that grips Sri Lanka, the international community must emphasize the need for the Sri Lankan government to take meaningful steps towards justice and accountability, demilitarization, and a political solution that addresses the long-standing demands for self-determination by the Tamil people. The United States must play a leading role in ensuring Sri Lanka faces consequences through the renewal of the crucial OHCHR mandate at the September UNHRC session and the use of bilateral levers, such as targeted sanctions, human rights conditionalities on trade, and immediate suspension of military partnerships. The United States must not only be a leader in the effort to address Tamil genocide through an international accountability mechanism, but formally recognize the Tamil genocide. Earlier today, the Canadian Parliament unanimously passed a motion recognizing May 18th as Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day. 13 years after the Mullivaikkal massacre, I look at the courage of the families of the disappeared, who have protested for years, demanding answers on their loved ones. Especially as I think about those who have passed, never knowing the fate of their loved ones, I urge us all to recognize that justice delayed is justice denied. True reform of the Sri Lankan state, the ability of Tamil people to live in their homeland with freedom and dignity, and a peaceful and prosperous future for all those on the island can only come through justice and accountability. Today, we remember the Tamil genocide. We mourn those lost 13 years ago and honor their memory. And in this time of collective grief, may we find strength in coming together in community and solidarity, and renewing our commitment to justice, self-determination, and a free and peaceful future for the Tamil people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. Justice C.V. Wigneswaran is the leader of the Tamil People's Alliance and a member of the Sri Lankan Parliament. He is the first Chief Minister of Tamil Majority Northern Province and is a former Supreme Court judge. Due to unforeseen reason, Justice Wigneswaran is unable to join us live. However, he has sent us a video message, and here it is.
Vanakkam, everybody. This year is a special year of remembrance of the sad day in the year 2009, which marked the culmination of a vicious, merciless attack on hundreds of thousands of innocent Tamil civilians. It is perhaps poetic justice that those who were at the helm of that slaughter have been hounded out by those who cheered them on in ignorance at that time. There is a saying in Tamil that says, Arasan andarupan, Teivam nindrarukkum. The king punishes immediately, divinity abides its time to strike. This is perhaps divine retribution 13 years later. Perhaps the gods have had to step in since the machinery for the administration of justice has ground to a halt insofar as justice for Tamils was concerned. The Bible says you reap what you sow. The Sinhala villager has a pithy and trite saying as follows, Kala kala de, pala pala de. For all that people do, for sure, they would have their reciprocal fruition. I had referred to this Sinhala saying in Parliament in my maiden speech in August 2020 and even repeated it recently in Parliament. Those who committed hideous wrongs against innocent people are today suffering 13 years later in the same month in which those wrongs were then committed. Many Tamils who went through sufferings in the yesteryears have at some stage or other questioned the relevance of their sufferings and the wrongdoers going unpunished. Today, the Sri Lankan youth belonging to the majority community are teaching lessons to their own political leaders. What happened to Tamils in 1958, 1961, 74, 77, 81 and 83 are being reenacted. Only this time the victims are the oppressors and suppressors of yesteryears. The Sinhalese are astounded at the brazen attack on peaceful protesters at Gaulface. Most are unaware of the attacks on Tamil Satyagrahis at the same venue long before the militant struggle began. Many of the Sinhalese today are cheering on the violent response to the thuggery unleashed by the government. Perhaps they would realize, indeed they must realize, that the Tamils were a docile and peaceful people and militancy was begotten by the repeated discrimination and violence unleashed on them by successive Sinhalese governments. Perhaps the ordinary Sinhalese will remember that the memorials erected in remembrance of their dear dead ones by our people in the north and east were broken and destroyed by the Rajapaksas and their ilk. Today, the statue of the late D.A. Rajapaksa, the father of Mahinda, Gotabaya and Basil, stands destroyed in the south. When British left us in the middle of the 20th century, they failed to ensure safety and fair play for the minorities in their erstwhile colony, Ceylon. Their unitary constitution gave way to a dictatorship of the majority within a democratic framework. From the time of independence, repression and discrimination against the Tamil-speaking people continued. If the Britishers had given us a confederal constitution, the minorities would have been able to retain their individuality and freedom, untrammeled by the dictatorial designs of the majority community. Today, the north and east are under military occupation. Since the end of the war, over a lack of military men are continuously in occupation of our traditional homelands. They cultivate our lands and take profits from them. They run tourist hotels and earn income. They occupy people's houses while the owners are living elsewhere at other people's mercy. They run business houses, restaurants, and shops competing with the locals. They obtain income from the Sinhalese fishermen brought by them from the south, who have taken over fishing rights from the locals, depriving them of their livelihood. They help the Buddhist priests from the south who are destroying Hindu temples in the north and east to replace them with Buddhist places of worship. And they are helping in the plundering of our resources by the southerners. Speaking of the plundering of our resources, the ilmenite deposits along the northeastern shore are fast disappearing. There are ilmenite deposits along the coastline of the northern and eastern provinces. There are 12 locations in Sri Lanka with ilmenite. Of these, only 3 are in the north and east. The remaining 9 sites are in the south. Hitherto, only our areas have been mined for ilmenite. The people of the locality are angry that when Sri Lanka has 12 potential sites for mining, it is the Tamil areas of the north and east that are mined, causing extensive devastation of the environment as pointed out by environmentalists, and it is a clear case of exploitation. Further, all income from the ilmenite deposits are taken by the central government, nothing to the province as such. Now, with the absence of the provincial councils, the continued exploitation of our shoreline is taking place with renewed energy. The areas in the south are safe from exploitation. Similarly, our granite, our minerals, our valuable forestries and many other resources are being taken away by southerners with the active participation of the military. If the military were not around, our people would have stopped such daylight robbery of our assets and resources. The military seems to be stationed in the north and east in order to carry out their nefarious activities, not for security reasons. The government spends a substantial portion of its budget on defense and security. Perhaps today Sri Lanka will wake up to the fact that the priority in terms of expenditure is not those expenses necessary for regime security, such as military recruitments and military hardware, but national security in its truest sense: food security, environmental security, resource security, etc. Recently, it was reported that the Independence Day celebrations this year recorded the highest expenditure for the event in the last 5 years. By 4th February this year, Sri Lanka was staring at bankruptcy and yet felt the need to waste money on extravagance. Profligacy in the face of bankruptcy, corruption even when the kickbacks were from borrowed money, ruled the roost as it were. Let me elaborate on a few. How could the Rajapaksas have given recognition to the Karunas and the Pilayans, to the KPs and others who were earlier with the LTT, without receiving ample benefits from them to spare their lives? Now the Sinhalese youth are asking as to what happened to the gold the government captured from the tigers. The extent to which the powers that be in Sri Lanka have plundered the assets of the country shows that the war was a business for them. The poor Tamils and Muslims became the scapegoats for their genocidal activities. The main reason why Sri Lanka is today facing its economic impasse is due to the maintenance of a large force of military far in excess of its needs and the haphazard borrowing of large loans from various sources, including China, to prosecute the war, which have now accumulated to $52 billion. No proper assessment has been done to check on the suitability and the propriety of purchasing many armaments for the forces. Under the pretext of state secrets, any questioning with regard to their actual needs have been suppressed. They may have been purchased for collateral benefits. Mega building projects constructed under Rajapaksa presidency with Chinese loans by Chinese companies continue to incur huge losses to the Sri Lankan government. Sri Lanka's Hambantota Port, Mattala Airport, Magam Ruhunapura International Conference Hall, MRICH, and the Hambantota International Cricket Stadium, built at great cost, are all white elephants today. Sri Lanka's economic mess today is directly attributable to the Rajapaksas. What should we Tamils do at this juncture? What should our goals be? Let me leave you with a few thoughts, bearing in mind that the Tamils who have been blighted by war, bullied by occupying forces, buffeted by the present economic crisis are the most vulnerable in this island. Firstly, as an immediate measure, steps should be taken to ensure the food security of the Tamils, particularly the female-headed households and other vulnerable groups. We have been taking steps to help persons cultivate certain vegetables and other crops and have established nurseries. This project has to be expanded to a larger scale to cover as many people as possible, because availability of good variety of vegetable seeds would promote home gardening in a big way. 2, microfinance has to be revived. Assistance must be rendered to ensure that people could survive the next 1 to 2 years. 3, ensure that medicines are available in the north and east at least. I recommend discussing with the health officials in charge of the area and making available the required medicines based on need. Channeling these medicines through the central government will result in the medicines being siphoned out. Maybe we could get the help of our alternate medicine doctors to treat appropriate diseases too. Fourthly, providing necessary assistance to our farmers and fishermen to ensure that their produce is not affected due to the long power shortages. We need to popularize alternate sources of energy such as solar energy, windmill energy, etc. to ease the energy crisis. Fifth one, instituting legal action against illegal fishing and encroachment by fishermen from the south. Our fishermen need assistance with their nets and boats. Sixthly, providing scholarship to our students with conditions on repayment to the community after graduation. The education-focused culture of the Tamils has finally succumbed to the repeated attacks on it, from standardization to marginalization. It is imperative that our educational culture is revived through well-publicized scholarships at different age groups. Seventhly, the military must be withdrawn from the north and east, and Tamil-speaking police must be asked to take over security now. It is essential that we maintain pressure on this front to allow our people the basic freedoms of movement and association. Sri Lanka was supposed to inform the UN of the areas occupied by the military and indicate the purposes for the same. As far as I know, such a report has not been submitted. It is essential that pressure is maintained on all fronts, and these reports must be sent, or we must force them to send it. In conclusion, let me repeat what I said last year. It is important, in order to bring an end to the sufferings of the Tamil-speaking peoples of the north and east of Sri Lanka, to hold an internationally supervised referendum to find out their democratic option with regard to their future. Finding out their preference either for unitary constitution or a confederation would lead to peace, democracy, and reconciliation in this country of Sri Lanka. I thank you.
Due to family emergency, Mr. Gadendra Kumar was unable to attend today. So with that, but before we conclude this event, on behalf of the Tamil American United Political Action Committee, I would like to thank you all for attending today's Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day gathering. Special thanks to all the speakers, and many thanks to all who made this event possible by working tirelessly behind the scenes. Also, thank you to the Tamil Diaspora Organization for all your support. Have a good evening. Thank you.